Hello friends. If you've been following my channel, you know I've been trying to grow duckweed all summer long. My endeavor to grow duckweed actually started over a year ago or a year ago. Honestly can't remember. I discovered there were people actually growing it for their ducks. It wasn't just growing naturally. They had it actually in pools or stock tanks or somehow, they were purposely growing duckweed and feeding it to their ducks. At the time, I think I only had geese when I first was interested in this. I can't remember for sure now. But I researched it, could not find a source, asked online, Facebook, nobody answered my post of where I could maybe get some free duckweed or buy it. It was really, go to your fish store or whatever. Well, I'm in the boonies. I wasn't about to drive 2-3 hours to go buy some duckweed. And I gave up. Well, then last spring, a comment was made on some post that this person had gotten, and I think it was in one of the Texas groups, that he was growing duckweed for his ducks. And I had ducks by then. And I asked him where he got the duckweed. And well, he purchased it on Amazon. So I did a bunch of research. Yep, I could get it. It was like $7. I mean, it wasn't, it was cheap. So I did some research. I think it was that same thread. I'm not sure that, because by then I had gotten the impression it needed cooler weather, that it did better up north. Well, he said as long as it has shade. He was actually farther south in Texas than me, and he was doing it successfully, but in the shade. And so when I found out, I found a source I could buy, and that somebody was actually successfully growing duckweed here in Texas, I took the plunge. I was going to grow duckweed. So I made the decision. The first thing I needed to do, though, was, I wanted to grow it in this stock tank. When I bought the stock tank for one purpose, no longer needed it for that purpose, was just sitting here. Occasionally I, would go play in there, but hardly ever. I mean, it's more of a pool for children rather than me. But I had it over in this area. You can kind of see a circle where it had been. And so I cleaned it all out, got it nice and clean, emptied it of all the water, got a neighbor to help me move it over here under this nice cedar tree so it has lots of shade. Ordered the duckweed. I ordered 500 plants. I always kind of wondered, because you could, for the same price, you could get 250 or 500. I think that's what it was, or 500 and 1,000. I can't remember. I think the max was 500. And I mean, these are very small plants. So I was just like, I don't know how he figured out how much was 500 plants. But anyway, I contact the post office, let them know perishable plants was coming. They text me the day it came, went to the post office, came here. By that time, this had been moved here. I had already filled it up with water. So it had been sitting here waiting for the duckweed for several days. Came home, walked straight, opened the box, or actually it wasn't even a box. I can't remember now if it was a box or an envelope, but came over here, immediately put the duckweed in there. And waited. It grew, but very slowly. Very, very slowly. In fact, I was kind of surprised how slow it did grow. I was really kind of discouraged how slowly it was growing. It was growing so slowly that, I really was getting frustrated maybe it had doubled in a couple months' time or a month time. I just expected it to grow faster. Everything I had read always said how fast duckweed grows and how invasive it is. So I started, every time there was a YouTube video that mentioned duckweed, I would watch it. I researched. It was very hard to find any information on growing duckweed. But I finally came across some information that told me it needed nitrogen. And so when I started, at the time I had rabbits in here. Right now it's empty. I've removed all the rabbits. But when I would clean up all the rabbit poop, I would take a bucket, a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit, and I'd dump it in there. And it seemed to help a teeny bit. Well, then we had, a bunch of bad weather, and the rabbit poop really started accumulating in there. And I was able to fill up a couple buckets. I mean, it probably equaled close to 5 gallons of poop, 4 to 5 gallons of rabbit poop. I just dumped right in here and left it. And the duckweed just started taking off. Then, that was back in August. I'm a happy camper. It's starting to grow, starting to spread real well. I'm happy. Well, then we started getting a lot of rain in September, and it cooled down. Summer was coming to an end. It actually cooled down quicker. Usually in September we are still in the 90s, and with all the rain, we were starting to get cooler temperatures in the 80s, which is very unusual. So I had extra nitrogen and a lot of cooler weather, and it really was doing well. And then, we had a break from the rain. We had 3 weeks of rain, lots and lots of rain, muddy out here. And I was really happy, but I noticed the water level was pretty high. I mean, it was coming to the brim, but it had stopped raining. It will evaporate, right? Well, no. October arrived, and it might have been like a week and a half of dry weather, basically dry weather. And it started raining, but not just an inch or two. 2 weeks in a row, during the nighttime, we had on my land alone, I got over 3 inches. It's like, within a 2-day period, 3-day period, 2 weeks in a row, over 7 inches. Basically, from the beginning of September to not even all of October, I got an entire year's worth of rain. Roads were washed out. Bridges were washed out. People died. I mean, it was pretty bad. Well, of course, all that water landed in this pool. Now, there may be a tree above the pool, but the water, it literally overflowed. And I was so discouraged because, I had the first week and it overflowed, got, over 7 inches, it overflowed, and all the duckweed, there was just a little bit of duckweed left, not very much. But, what's the likelihood of a repeat? And so I didn't think it was going to, I should have removed some water. I should have harvested the duckweed and maybe put it into a container where it wouldn't have been washed away, but I really didn't think it was going to be a repeat. But the next week we had an exact same repeat. And I was left with maybe 10 or 20 individual plants floating around. I could literally walk all the way around the pool and see duckweed on the ground. Little individual plants. I'm sure these guys found it. And also the geese. I don't know if you can see, there's a goose right there. So the other one's over there. Oh, there's the other goose. I'm sure they were going around the pool eating up the duckweed. I'm guessing. I don't know. I didn't see it actually happen. But after, honestly, I really thought that I was going to not have any duckweed, that I'd have to order it again. And so, I made plans on what I would do if the duckweed didn't come back, getting rid of some of the water before I bought more duckweed, etc. Well, it actually started growing. Enough individual plants were left, and there was enough nitrogen that it started growing. I think I might have removed a little bit of the water, but not nearly enough. I mean, as you can see, it still has a ton of water in there. It started growing and growing and growing. And last week, it was like this. I have photos or video, one of the two. I was counting down the days when I could make this video. My goal was that it would be wall-to-wall duckweed. Every speck of this pool would be just covered in duckweed, and I would be able to give these ducks clean water, because the water looks like this within 15 to 30 minutes. I mean, as soon as they find the pool, it starts looking like this. I mean, I can clean it. I could clean this water right this minute, and 30 minutes later, it'd be looking like this. So my thinking was I would clean their pools, scoop up all this duckweed and put it in the pools, and they could come and just gobble up all the healthy duckweed. Well, then, the beginning of this week, I guess it was Monday and Tuesday, the wind was crazy. I mean, just absolutely crazy. Yeah, it's windy right now, but it's nothing. I mean, there were sustained 15 to 20 mile per hour winds. Sustained. With constant gusts above that. It was, I almost fell down several times. It would get so windy. It was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I don't even live in the panhandle, in the areas of this state or in the U.S. where it actually is, super windy. And I couldn't believe how windy it was. Well, that Monday, I believe it was Monday and Tuesday was the windy days. Well, I walked by, and literally about 2/3 of the duckweed that had been there the day before was gone. The wind had literally blown it out of the pool. I mean, and the day before, I could taste it would just be a couple, 2-3 days, and the pool would be covered in duckweed, and I could do this video. And then now, it was gone. And then the next day, even more of the duckweed had been blown over. And that's when I literally removed, I'm not seeing what I did with it. I have a watering can, holds about 2.5 gallons. I removed 6 watering cans full, about 12, 13, 14 gallons of water out of this pool. And since it's full of nitrogen, I hauled it over to the garden and watered everything with it, trying to lower the level to keep more of the duckweed in the pool. And I think it's helped. And plus, the next day, I had still air. It wasn't windy. And so it's been growing like, every day it's growing. And if we don't have any more crazy weather, maybe next week it will be wall-to-wall duckweed and I can do my dream. But I'm now at the point where I thought I'd better do an update video to let you guys know how the duckweed is going. It does grow in hot climates, but I think it probably does a lot better in the colder months than the heat of the summer. Obviously, if you have record level rainfall, I mean, in less than 2 months, in about a month and a half, I got an entire year's worth of rain. If that happens and you're getting a ton of rain, you want to try to get the water out. You want the level of water below where it's not going to spill over the sides. You don't want, and if you don't want the water so high up that if suddenly you get ridiculous winds one day, it doesn't blow all the duckweed out of the pool. But duckweed does grow. I've had a very frustrating time because of the weather, but it does grow. I have a feeling next summer, the growth will probably be more stagnant and not do very well. But there's a lot of other things in the summer for them to eat, so as long as it stays alive, we're fine. And it survived this summer. It is, if you live in a hot climate, definitely have it in a shady spot. under a tree or something. If you live in a colder climate, where it snows and stuff, you probably want it in the sunshine, but I'd research. But duckweed does grow in warm climates. Of course, it likes still water. And of course, this pool is still, unless the wind is blowing like crazy or you're getting, record levels of rainfall. So that's the update. Duckweed will grow in Texas. It will grow in a hot climate. And I know once I get wall-to-wall carpet of duckweed and I can harvest and feed these guys, they will be so happy to get a snack of duckweed. And hopefully, as the months continue, no matter how cold it is, that it will just, it would be great if I could harvest some every day for the ducks. And the next day, it not look like I took any. That would be great. That's what I'm hoping, that I can feed these guys every single solitary day during the winter months when everything's dead and there's not as much food around, that this will be a free source of food. So that's the update on the duckweed. I hope you found this interesting. If you know anybody who's interested in growing duckweed, who has ducks, please share this video with them. If you like my videos and you haven't subscribed, I ask that you do subscribe. It really does help a lot, and like the video. Thank you so much for watching. And I hope you have a very wonderful day.